Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Okay, it is Answer Monday. Well, technically, I am doing the pre-record, so it's still Sunday for me. Anyway, it's been a very busy weekend. Oh my gosh, I don't know, all of a sudden, all this stuff happened, and I'm like, okay. So, I'm here now, no worries. And this will be uploaded at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time on Monday. So, I'm very excited. Now, if you guys had any issues with this quiz, let me know because I can tweak it. But the reason that I did it the way that I did it is because I want you guys to look at the details. And the details is going to make sure that you're catching it because the answers could go either way. Okay, so all right, let's get into it. Define number one, and remember guys, these exercises are not official. This is just me as a veteran medical coder sharing the things that I know. All right. Number one was define Munchausen syndrome. The answer is a disorder in which a person falsely reports or causes his or her own physical or psychological signs or symptoms. Now, if you got something similar to this, that's fine. But that's the gist of what Munchausen syndrome is, okay? Number two, what is the ICD-10 diagnosis code for Munchausen syndrome with physical symptoms? And the answer is F68.12, fictitious disorder imposed on self with predominantly physical signs and symptoms. So if you notice when you're looking up in the section, right, there's a bunch of different ones listed, okay? So that's something to look at and pay attention to because sometimes the provider's not always going to know that there's a particular code for that, okay? So always watch for those things, all right? Number three, what is the ICD-10 diagnosis code for an initial encounter of a confirmed child victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy perpetrated by the stepmother who used social media to make her stepchild think that they were being bullied in school? The answer, T74.32XA, adult and child abuse, neglect, and other maltreatment confirmed, psychological abuse confirmed initial encounter. Then I have X58.XXXA, exposure to other specified factors, initial encounter. And then I got Y07.433, stepmother, perpetrator of maltreatment and neglect. So remember, if you have any of that other initial information, like who it is, only on the initial encounters are you going to report those Y codes, okay? Remember that. Always only on the initial encounter. Don't do it when they're on subsequent visits because they already know it's already in the record. So, remember that. Number four, define Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This is when, see how the difference is between Munchausen syndrome and then Munchausen's syndrome by proxy. Okay, so number four is define Munchausen syndrome by proxy. The answer is a disorder in which a caregiver, perpetrator, falsely reports or causes an illness or injury in another person, the victim, under his or her care, such as a child, an elderly adult, or a person who has a disability. So, see? Difference, okay? Number five, who is assigned the diagnosis Munchausen syndrome by proxy? Who is it assigned to? The answer is the perpetrator, okay? That diagnosis should only be in the perpetrator's record, okay? Munchausen syndrome by proxy, okay? And like I demonstrated, the victim is going to have that other code that's basically going to be abuse, the abuse code. So remember. Number six, what is the ICD-10 diagnosis or diagnoses codes for a patient who reports with bilateral knee osteoarthritis, hypertension, irritability, and post-traumatic stress disorder? The answer, M17.0 for the bilateral osteoarthritis of the knee, I10 for hypertension, and F43.10, post-traumatic stress disorder, unspecified. And that's it. Did you notice I didn't pick up irritability? Irritability is not picked up because it is a symptom of PTSD. And how did I know that? I'm going to be including a link that you can reference, okay? And it lists all of the symptoms that are a part of PTSD. So when there are symptoms, you do not pick them up in conjunction with, okay? It says PTSD is diagnosed when a person experiences, this is just some little factoids about it, okay? I'm sorry, y'all. It's, I want to sneeze. Okay. PTSD is diagnosed when after a person experiences symptoms for at least 1 month following a traumatic event. However, symptoms may not appear until several months or even years later. The disorder is characterized by 3 main types of symptoms: re-experiencing the trauma through intrusive, distressing recollections of the event, flashbacks, and nightmares. The second one is emotional numbness and avoidance of places, people, and activities that are reminders of the trauma. And 3, increased arousal, such as difficulty sleeping and concentrating, feeling jumpy, and being easily irritated and angered. Okay, so oftentimes providers will use these words like anger, irritability in conjunction with, okay? That's not something that you want to, it's not something that you want to pick up. You don't want to pick up the symptom codes. And I know you must be thinking, gosh, really? I got to know all this stuff and I got to understand it. It just helps you so that way you're picking up the appropriate diagnosis codes. You have to know what is involved, okay? So a lot of times, you know, making sure that you understand the disease process, and in this condition, post-traumatic stress disorder, you really should read up on what it is and understand it, because it's going to help you, especially when you're picking up diagnosis codes. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to be leaving the link for a reference. Okay. And number 7, what is the diagnosis codes for a patient who has symptoms of anxiety? The answer, R45.89, other symptoms and signs involving emotional state. And I made a little note. When selecting an actual mental health diagnosis code, like in the F code series, okay, the patient must have a confirmed diagnosis of this. Just because a patient has symptoms of anxiety does not mean that they suffer from anxiety. It may be transient in nature. Look for the words symptoms, because this shows ambiguity. And in the outpatient setting, everything must be absolute if there is no definitive diagnosis. Okay, so sometimes these things are not, they're not confirmed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Okay, oftentimes it may be just their PCM that says that they're having symptoms of anxiety, you know, or the patient came in because they're anxious. It doesn't mean that that patient has a definitive diagnosis of anxiety. If you're seeing that they have symptoms of, then you need to use the symptoms code, which is the R series, R code series, not the F series. The F series is going to be your definitive diagnosis. That is when the patient has actually been diagnosed with this. You have to be very careful about selecting mental health diagnoses. A lot of times when people are looking for employment and things like that, selecting these codes can affect them, okay? Because some people have to be cleared, and they can't have these kind of diagnoses on there if they're not confirmed. So always, always, always double check and make sure that you are selecting the correct, either the symptoms or the definitive diagnosis. Now, if they said that the patient has been diagnosed with anxiety, then of course pick up the F series code. But if they're saying that they have symptoms of, that's when you're going to go with the symptoms code, that R series. Okay, so remember that. Next one. The patient, number 8, the patient is observed to be in a catatonic stupor in catatonic schizophrenia? Now, of course, this was a softball one because I think you guys can pretty much see where I was going with this one. So the answer is F20.2 catatonic schizophrenia. Excludes one note. Okay, this is an example of excludes one note, right? Excludes one catatonic stupor R40.1. This is a symptom code for catatonic schizophrenia. So you're not going to pick them up when you see both of those together. So if the provider documented, oh, this patient was observed to be in a catatonic stupor because they have catatonic schizophrenia, you're not going to pick up that R code in conjunction with that F code because the book is already telling you that it's an excludes one note. When you see that excludes one note, you're going to go for the one that is definitive, which is the catatonic schizophrenia in this particular case. Okay. And I will be doing more exercises with the excludes one notes because I know and excludes two because it gets confusing. But I'll show you guys eventually how to look into those. Okay. So that way it's not so confusing. All right. Number 9, the patient is being seen for an acute reaction to stress. The answer? F43.0 acute stress reaction. Pay attention to the colloquialisms. Do your research to learn the differences and what is similar. So because the provider says an acute reaction to stress, it still falls under acute stress reaction. Okay, so another thing to look at. All right, and number 10. The patient is being seen for a fear of spiders. Could you find it out? And when did that movie come out? Well, hold on. The answer is F40.210 arachnophobia. Now, this is another thing that you have to kind of work on. Those words, the technical word for fear of whatever. Because sometimes when you're looking in the book, you're not going to be able to find it. You have to know the actual technical word, okay? And so the technical word for fear of spiders is arachnophobia. And I'm trying to remember, when did that movie come out, Arachnophobia? It may have been in the late 80s or early 90s. I can't remember. I never saw it because I can't stand spiders. I don't do spiders, okay? I do not do spiders. I don't do spiders. I don't do snakes. Oh. No, I can't. I can't. No. Nope. So anyway, that was the quiz. How did you do? I'm very interested. So if you let me know how did you do, that way I can either kick it up a notch on the difficulty level, or I can, if I need to bring it down a notch, let me know. I will be doing some demonstrations of the book, so that way, like looking up the diagnosis codes and looking up at the procedure codes, because I think sometimes we have to go back to the basics on some things, and that's been a request that I've been getting a lot of lately. So we're gonna go ahead and go over some of those things. But well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this quiz. Let me know. We will continue on with the psych. So anyway, Friday will be another quiz on psych, so get ready. So anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. I will include my email address down in the description box below, and I will include the answers down in the description box as well. So if you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. Okay, I will see y'all on the next video. Bye!